Now from the Las Piedras Railroad, the top 4 model railroads on our top 10. Number 4 is John Parker's incredible Fall River Division.
Hi, and welcome back to the BNSF Fall River Division in HO scale. In our previous video, we toured John Parker's incredible HO scale layout, and today we're going to take a look at operations. So for the next few minutes, enjoy as we take a little bit of a closer look at some of the unique trains that run over this incredible railroad. Today we're going to be following the Public Service or PSC coal train, which is a job that runs nearly the entire length of the railroad, from the Public Service power plant in the east to the Black Diamond mine in the west. However, before our train's ready to leave Fall River Yard, it's a very busy main line and there's quite a bit of traffic that the dispatcher has to clear up before our train's ready to leave Fall River and make its way westbound over the railroad to the mine. Here's some of the traffic that's out on the line ahead of our train. First up is an empty eastbound intermodal led by BNSF 4593. These empty intermodal trains are often referred to as bear tables, and this one's destined for Fall River Yard, where it'll terminate and the cars will be taken to the intermodal facility where they'll be loaded with shipping containers and readied for an outbound train. Entering the town of Sage, this is the first siding westbound out of Fall River Yard where the dispatcher can coordinate meets. He's lined up the bear table train through Sage on the main line, while he's holding a loaded welded rail train in the siding, which will be ready to go west as soon as this train clears. This is an incredible and meticulously modeled train that John has done here on the layout, using long pieces of plastic to replicate the continuous welded rail which spans 20 to 30 cars without break, and it's really an incredible train. Once both these trains have cleared Sage, we can finally catch up with our PSC coal train. It's empty and headed westbound towards the mine, and the dispatcher has lined him out of the yard, but not very far. He's already lined him into the siding at Sage, where he's coordinated another meet with one more loaded eastbound coal train, which they'll meet before our PSC coal train can continue westbound over the railroad and over the hill. So the engineer is going to bring the train to a stop at the west end of the siding and hold until our loaded eastbound is by and the meet is complete. With the meet finished, we next catch up with a PSC coal train as it's in mountainous terrain just outside of Winston. Here, the 3 EMDs are in full dynamics as they take this train down the grade towards the bottom of the hill at Kimber. With no eastbounds presently in sight, the dispatcher has lined the PSC coal train through the siding at Overlook on the main line. Here, this is an incredible part of the railroad that's very mountainous and representative of the Cascade and Western Mountains in the United States, with some incredible scenery and some even more incredible backdrops that really bring this scene to life. Once down the mountain and through the town of Kimber, the railroad enters the flatlands and double track. Here, the dispatchers lined an eastbound intermodal which is heading towards us from Main 1 to Main 2 so that we can meet him on the double track and continue westbound on Main 1.
We're waiting at the signal in West Winston, and we will be ready to go down the hill whenever we have a clear railroad. All right, we're going to send you down the hill. You got work along the way?
We're now nearly on the westernmost point of the railroad, at the Black Diamond Mine, and this is where the PSC coal train terminates, or at least turns around. Here, the engineer is going to bring the train into the yard where they're going to stop, inspect the train and make sure it's ready for loading, and then load it via flood loader. You'll notice that there's also a Union Pacific coal train here, and Union Pacific has trackage rides over the Fall River Division on various points throughout the railroad, and also loads coal trains here at the Black Diamond Mine. Once loaded, our PSC coal train is going to return eastbound back towards Fall River and the public service power plant beyond that. We next catch it here at a place on the railroad called Crater Loop, where the railroad does a 360-degree turn and loops over itself. Our train also stopped at a location called Kimber, which is the point, if you recall, on the bottom of the hill. This is where all eastbound heavy trains stop and helper locomotives are added to push them up towards the top of the hill. With our loaded PSC coal train well on its way back towards the power plant, that just about wraps up this video. I know I didn't cover everything, but I also wanted to be able to focus on running trains and operating while I had the opportunity to visit. So I want to thank John for the opportunity to share this layout with you guys, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.
Number 3 is Lance Minheim's Downtown Miami Spur.
I think that, like all of us, when I was 8 or 9, for some reason my parents decided to set up a model railroad in our basement, which to this day they don't remember, but I just remember being so captivated by that. And then when I was 16 or 17, I just happened to be browsing through the hobby store and saw an issue of Model Railroader, and I was off and running. I'm a full-time custom layout builder and layout designer by occupation. I cater primarily to prototype modelers, those that have a particular memory or vignette in their mind that they want to capture. And then once it's completed, it's disassembled, we put it in a pods container, it's shipped to the customer site, and I assemble it and they are off and running. I'd always been interested in Miami railroading, and as a trial I built the East Rail layout up in my shop, and that was very successful. It was roughly a L-shaped 10 by 10 switching layout, and based on the enjoyment that I got out of that project, I decided to delve into things a little bit deeper and came up with a plan, and this is what you're looking at today. Originally, the downtown spur was the old Seaboard Airline double track into downtown Miami, and that was truncated with the construction of the I-95 interstate. For those familiar with Miami, the line starts about at the airport and splits off of the CSX main and runs pretty much east-west 3.5 miles into downtown Miami. And what makes it unique is it really seems to be locked back in 1955 in terms of the industries that you're looking at. You have a lot of small industries that just take a car or two. You have a lot of variety, so it's really ideal for model railroading. Because Miami is flat, the scenery was very simple. I just put 1.5 inches of extruded foam on top of hollow core doors. The structures in Miami have a very complex weathering pattern, which would make them very hard to model convincingly using conventional means. So what I've done, since Miami is not that hard to get to, is go to the site, take photographs from the sides of each structure, and then essentially laminate or wallpaper the photographs onto the structures, and that way I can get the exact color, weathering, and graffitiing. When you have a layout such as this, where I copied the prototype fairly accurately, it lends itself very well to prototype practices, and since I have friends with CSX, people that are rail fans in the area, I get a pretty good sense for how the trains are run. So when I have an operating session, I'll invite a couple friends over, we'll make up a switch list, and then we just copy the CSX practices. The larger industries are switched pretty much every session. That would be the scrap dealers and Trujillo. The smaller ones maybe every other. So we don't have a game of beat the clock. There is no fast clock. We want to make it relaxing. We try to employ procedures like brake tests, setting the brake wheels, operating at prototypical speeds. So although a session may go 2.5 or 3 hours, it's really not a game of gotcha. At this point, I would say the layout is 65 or 70% done. I'm going to add another locomotive with more modern decoders, and then there's a couple corners that have fairly involved scenery that I'm going to go back and start picking up in those areas. I love Miami, and it's got that Miami Vice feel, so I think I've accomplished what I wanted in terms of being transported to the area. And it's not just the layout, but the friendships that have developed in the course of pulling it together.
Number 2 is Mike Confalone's Allagash Railway.
Hi, I'm Mike Confalone. Welcome to the Allagash Railway video tour. In this video, I hope to give you a clear and comprehensive view of my railroad as it exists in the railroad room environment, really. You and I are going to visit every key location on the railroad. We're going to look at the scenery, the structures, the operation, track plan, and we're going to see plenty of trains in action along the way as well. Before we do that, let's take an aerial tour, a bird's eye view of the entire Allagash system so that you get an idea of where all the pieces to the Allagash puzzle fit together. We've got a lot to look at, so let's get started. Okay, here's the first elevated view of the walkthrough. Again, I'm on a step ladder now, just to give everybody a better idea of how the track and the benches sort of relate to one another. So the entrance doorway is right behind me. I'm standing right at the entrance doorway. When you come into the room, this is the first thing you see on the left is the Martin Spur, which is yet to be scenic. And that's part of the Oxford County. You've got a staging yard underneath. I'll swing here. You can see some cars staged under there. That's the north end staging of the Allagash, Jackman and Allagash. I curve back this way. On my right is the Oxford County above. And below is the south end staging for the Androscoggin subdivision, which represents Bethel and Dixfield. This is what you see when you enter the room. Swing hard to my right here. The Oxford County. We'll follow that a little bit. If I go up, you'll see that this backdrop does not go all the way to the ceiling. It's a partial, the actual physical masonite backdrop. There's an agway. We're going to look at all of this stuff in detail, blow by blow, place by place. This will give you a good idea of where things sit. We're in the garage, by the way. And there's the Oxford County terminating down at the engine facility at North Rumford. This is North Rumford on the Oxford County. Let's swing back.
Thanks for watching the Las Piedras Railroad Top 10 Model Railroads, and now number 1. Boomer Dioramas River Road.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain.
How's everybody doing? So I just want to show a small sample of what operations are going to possibly look like down the road on River Road. And the reason why I say that is because I like to finish the layout. I think operations are cool, but it's not a priority to me. Like I've often said this before, people have mentioned, maybe in contrast to the shelf layout opposed to the I got a really big layout or whatever. That's sort of a funny phrase to me because oftentimes people will say, well, I don't have enough room to build a layout. But really what they're saying is they don't have enough room to go in circles, like a really big circle. And, without getting into all the semantics of that, there is no excuse to model a railroad if you understand it more than just, going around in circles, right? For me, the model railroad is about how I view the railroad and how I understand it or have come to understand it later on in life. I don't want a big layout. Even if I had the resources and the money, I wouldn't bother because I'm just not interested. Because first of all, you want the layout to be finished, and it'll never get finished by the time you've already used it up. You've already run it around in circles in a mundane way, 180 times or something, or 1,000 times, and it's just, you never finish the railroad because you're just done with it. You're done with running the train. Like, there's no depth to it. It's just this idea, like, you should just run trains in circles and just build a plywood Pacific and just be done with it. Don't bother. Don't bother modeling a railroad because you're not ready to model one, right? And the reason why I say that is because maybe it's because we're in this sort of consumer culture where we just want everything right now, right? And it just doesn't work that way. Like, I don't think it matters. Like, you could build a railroad that's, 12 feet long, 16 feet long, highly detailed, 1 or 2 locations. And you can literally operate on the thing for years to come. It depends on your philosophy. Like, if you want to run in circles or run big trains in a mundane way or whatever, like it might not even be mundane. It might be just really cool. But the thing is how do you get there? I mean, there are exceptions, right? There's people that have been building model railroads for like 30, 40 years. They have a big layout. They run in circles, but I bet you that's the last thing on their mind because they really do understand that trains just simply do not run in circles. They run from point A to point B, they turn and they go back. So the shelf layout is really just a very sort of hyper-compressed concept of that. And it involves modeling everything from, the little boat on the shore to the barge slip, to weathering cars, to custom building a locomotive, like a one knockoff that's, inspired by the actual prototype that you actually see in real life, or research through photos. I mean, it might be in history, it might be a railroad that you can't access, and that's fine too. But there's more to it than just saying, I need more space because I got to run in a big circle. So I think a lot of people that, build the shelf layout, they understand that. And so with operations, like, I know there's years and progressively as I build it, but I don't operate that much, but I do test things because I want the track to be flawless. I want everything to work, and so far it does. But I have a ways to go, and I haven't even fleshed out or written the story of ops, although I have the locations. I have the brewery off to the left here. I've got the barge slip for all the bridge traffic that is, existing in the imaginary world that comes on and off the layout. I have the transload facility down the far end where Axton Steel is. Then there's Ipex Plastics. There's a small yard in that area. And then there's the other section 3, which I haven't even built yet, but I know where I'm going with it, which is grain ops. And then at the end of that, there's a stub end that goes off into another imaginary world. So don't say that you don't have room to build a layout. This is a 10 by 12 room. It's a shelf layout concept, meaning that it's built like a shelf. Like, this isn't hard, fast construction. I can pull this down with ease. It's almost freestanding with a few cleats on the wall, just like a picture frame or a standard shelf. It's just built that way. There's more to a shelf layout than just the idea of just a flat surface to lay track on. But what I want to do is just show you basically a short sample of an ops that takes about, half an hour. And before I do, I'll just give you an example of what I saw the other day on this railroad. I just happened to be driving by. I had my camera with me, and you'll see why I model this way and how I understand operations and the way I like to operate. Because at the end of the day, that's all I need is an hour or even maybe 15 minutes. That's it. Okay? Okay, so this is probably a good point to maybe bring this episode to a close and just talk or close with a couple of things. So the smaller layout, right? The advantages is you can basically complete scenes and feel like you've accomplished something. You touch every aspect of the model railroad on a smaller footprint. You're not overwhelmed by the endless plywood Pacific that stares you in the face every time you come down there, because you had this grandiose vision. Because maybe you said, well, I really love, well, let's just say the Milwaukee Road. I'm not going to ever build it, the layout about the Milwaukee Road, because I can't do it justice. You can't do any railroad justice anyway, right? Like the ideal footprint does not exist. And let me ask you this. So if you laid the track plan on your plywood benchwork of the Milwaukee Road in a warehouse, would anybody be able to walk in and say that's the Milwaukee Road without any scenery, without any rolling stock? They wouldn't know either, because the track plan would still have to be compressed. So I could have said about SRY Rail Link, you know, it's a 100-mile long short line. I could have said, oh, I can't do it justice, right? And just went on and lamented about that excuse my whole life. But what I did was I built other little layouts. Like, for example, I could say, well, that little branch line in Saskatchewan, I just can't do it justice. Yes, I can. Like, have you tried doing this? Have you tried just building a base, laying track and ballasting? Like, there's just no excuse. This is the smallest layout I have. So this layout here, in a sort of relevant way, is a big layout compared to that, right? So, you know, people, maybe they don't want to, maybe you never will. Or maybe you have a layout right now and you're feeling inspired and you're having fun with it, and that's good. And the next one that you build will be better or bigger, or actually it might be smaller. My layouts have actually gotten smaller over the years. Once I got over that, I got that out of my system, this massive layout. And besides, a lot of people that have large layouts, they either inherited them or they're in their 70s or 80s now. And it's been a club supported layout. It's been an association supporting. It's been a huge collective effort. So this idea of, well, I can't do the railroad justice, pick a scene, right? I picked like this scene. Like I went around this railroad through books and live on location. And I said, I'm going to pick 2 or 3 scenes. Unfortunately, you have to delete things. That's just the way it is. And capture the spirit of the railroad, right? That's what you want to do. Because you're never, ever going to have an adequate footprint to build your model railroad. You just have to model. And when you begin to dive in and decide, okay, I'm going to model a scene of my favorite railroad first and then see what happens after that. Like there's so much more to do on this layout, but I have a sense of peace about it and contentment that I know that it's doable and I have substance to operate. And as far as I go, I can operate. Like I haven't even built the ferry yet, for example, now in closing. I haven't, like when I do, like I can't imagine how long it's going to take me just to pull and swap 3 grain cars from Vancouver Island and then distribute them on another day after a hard day's work, basically down to the grain elevator. Or whatever. It just goes on and on. So don't be sucker punched by the big layout, you know, fantasy, right? Oh, if I can't have a big layout, I won't have fun. Well, if you can't have fun now on a small layout, you probably never will. So have fun. Build something like this, right? First, and see if you can even do it. Or you might even enjoy this. You might enjoy this so much, you might change scales. Or you might say, you know what, I just want 1 spur, 1 siding. I want to super detail it. I want to do this ratty old rundown warehouse with 1 switcher, even an O scale, and 3 cars or something. And you'll have a modeling nirvana, right? So that's why I model on a smaller layout. And that's why I can have all the operations I want. So be encouraged, right? Model railroading offers endless possibilities. Don't limit yourself. Don't fall prey to the, the deceiving colloquialism of I don't have enough room to do it justice. Yes, you do. Pick a scene, model it, have fun, and I hope you have a great day as well. Okay, cheers.
back a year ago.
The top 10 layouts from the Las Piedras Railroad. I'm AI Ava.